Hey everyone, and welcome to today's video. So we're actually looking at fitting the Borla unequal length manifold. So I've gone for that one purely down to the fact I'm after that Subaru Rumble. So I will be putting a cap back on at some point to up the volume. But I'm interested to see what difference it makes. So what I'll do, I'll insert a clip below of what the car sounds like completely stock in terms of the exhaust system, so you can hear that. And then we'll show you me roughly fitting the manifold, followed up by a clip of obviously the after, so you can get a comparison of the two. So let's jump into the install. Okay, so what you can see is we need to disconnect these two cables here. So if we push that in and pull, and then we've got this one here, which again, push that clip and out it comes. Now what you'll also see, just bring you in here, is this is the cable we've disconnected. It's actually clipped in here, so you just pull that out, and again down here it's clipped in. Just pull that out so it's completely loose. So once you've got that manifold off the bottom of the engine, you've not got to worry about any trapped wires, etc. So let's get that down. And it's the same with this one here. It's hooked in here, so pull that clip off, and again just for a little bit further down and they're just pushing clips, so they're just pushing clips, so you just pull those out, and hopefully if we drop that down, make sure it doesn't get snagged on any of the other bits and wires, and just put it over here next to this O2 sensor. It should drop out the car once we're in. So what's the next step? Next step is down here you've got a metal tray which you'll access from under the car, and we have to remove that. So I'll go and grab the tools and let you know what we need. Okay, so we're under the car now, and you can see this metal tray is actually covering up the bottom of the engine, so we need to get that removed. Now my car has been in an accident, and what became very clear rebuilding it recently is I did a lot of the exterior work. I didn't really get under here, but now getting under here, it's clear that someone's been under here at some point during maybe the investigation for the damage of what happened in the accident. So there's a lot of bolts missing, for example on this under tray it seems like there's a few. This one's loose, so someone's definitely been under here at some point, because I know I've not even touched this metal tray. From what I can see, there's a number of 13mm bolts on here, so you just need a socket to get those off, and it looks like there's some missing on here, but there should be some plastic clips to hold some of this trim. So when I put the car back together, I've got a load of spare clips and everything, so I'll make sure that goes in. But the thing for you to remember is you've got to take this tray off, so you just need to go round and remove as many bolts as you can do that are holding it on. So let's start getting these off. It's always handy when you're doing a job like this is have a little magnetic tray you can drop your bolts into without losing them, because it's all too easy to just drop them on the floor, but I can guarantee you'll kick them across the driveway or whatever and lose them. One's at the back here. Yes, mine was literally held on with 4 bolts. Hopefully yours has got a bit more in it. One thing I should have done actually is remove this little plastic clip. Let's just show you that. Over here. There's just a plastic clip there. Easily with a clip remover tool or just a flathead screwdriver. Get behind that. One looks a little worse for wear. And to be honest, should have undone that, removed this clip before we took the bolts out. So apologies for that. You don't want to tear the plastic it's attached to. There you go. And that's out. So at the front here we've got another plastic trim clip. So we just get our flathead screwdriver and remove that. Hiding under all this mud. That's out. And that's the metal tray removed. Okay, so now we've got the tray out the way, let's go to the back of the exhaust, the manifold first. And we've got a bolt here and a bolt here. Both of those need to be undone. So this is what's described as the overpipe, and it goes over the frame here. And then we've got the manifold, which is in front of it. Now that's attached to the car at two places. One here, just behind where we're disconnecting the overpipe. And there should be 3 bolts as you look up and in there. So let's get some light in. So you can see there's 3 bolts holding this end on. Then as you come along the manifold, you've got the heat shield. And let's get some light in there. Then up here, again, 1, 2, 3 bolts. So what I'm going to do now is just check out the size of the bolts on the overpipe and do those first. And then we'll come back and do the 6 of these, and it's as simple as that to get the manifold off. So one thing I'd recommend now, while the manifold's already cooled down from when we ran the car to move it this morning, is just use some PB Blaster or some WD-40 or something like that just to spray on these bolts, because any exhaust parts with the heat sort of expanding and contracting the metal, sometimes the bolts get a little bit jammed, so it's better to just soak them in something beforehand like this. Just so you can get in there and loosen those bolts off before you attack them with your socket. Okay, so just looking at the overpipe connection, there are 14 bolts, so you need a 14 socket, 14 spanner to undo those. There should be 1, 2 there, and then there are 6 bolts on the manifold attaching it to the engine. Again, they're 14, so everything's been soaked now for a little bit in terms of WD-40 or PB Blaster. So we're going to now try and get these undone. Okay, so I'm just going to use a bit of a breaker bar and a 14mm socket. They're loose already, and that one's gone. So I'm going to get a spanner now with a ratchet, hopefully, a wrench. There's enough room. Yeah, there is. So let's not undo. And they're actually coming off easier than I thought, which was good. It's not a lot of room, but right. Good thing is now is that finger tight. One off. Okay, that's 2 off. Okay, so we've got to remove this bolt here, and then there's one at the back here and another one here. So I'm going to use an impact gun, but you don't need it. You could just do it with a normal wrench and extensions. Okay, so that's 1 off. Let's take a look. We've got 1 here. two off. There should be a third one just tucked in back here. So let's see what angle we need to get in to get to that. I might have to move the camera. Right, that's three off. So that's 1, 2, 3. So that's this end. You can see now it's a little bit loose. So we need to go to the other end, which in the UK is the driver's side. Okay, so let's look. We've got one straight up in here. So let's see how we can fit in. It's a bit tricky trying to film and do and not hit the camera with the impact gun and everything else, so apologies if it's a bit all over the place. Will this fit? Right, that's in there. I mean, this impact gun isn't doing a lot of work, it's on its lowest setting, so they're not that tight. That's one out. So you definitely don't need an impact gun, it's just because I'm lazy. So the next one is just up here. Again, down that comes, that's two. Now this is our final bolt that's holding the manifold to the car, which is here. So it's just up here. So again, let's see if we can get this in. Yep, that can fit in. So what I would say is, before you undo this last bolt, just brace the manifold so it doesn't fall into your face as you undo that last bolt. Okay, you can see already it's coming off. Okay, so you can see now this should be off. It's undone at that end. We've done all three bolts here. We've done the two overpipes, so what's holding it on? Let's have a look. So it looks like the connection to the overpipe maybe is getting in the way of removal. So it's just working out. So we've got a gap here now between the overpipe and the manifold. It's just working out how we remove this, because there are studs coming out of the stock manifold going through, and it's what clamps together. They're just not releasing enough to let this drop down and out. So we're just gonna have a quick look at that and then we'll come back to you. Okay, so with a little manoeuvring around these studs. So I know some of the guides tell you to drop off the pipes at the back to give you some manoeuvrability, but a little bit of play, keep going and going at this, and I managed to actually get this off the car without having to remove any of those. So we'll drop that out now. There you go. That's the stock one out. And there's a lot of space there now, so you can see why people mount turbos at the bottom of this engine bay, because there's now, that's out the way. There's tons of room. Okay, so now we've got the manifold off the car, we can see the comparison between the two. So you can see this is our Borla one. There's a lot less of it. Obviously this has got heat shielding. It's also got the first cat on the car. The car's got two cats, so we're removing one of those cats. And you can see the Borla is unequal length, so what that means is the distance from here to here is shorter on this side than it is for this, and that's where your traditional Subaru boxer engine rumble comes from, because they come from factory with an unequal length manifold. The BRZ actually comes with an equal length, so we're switching that out. So not only are we allowing the gases to escape a little bit freer without a cat, we should also get some of that rumble from a Subaru as well. So what we need to do is switch these two sensors over into the new manifold. Okay, so off camera there, I just took our old O2 sensors from the stock manifold, took those off. They needed plenty of WD-40 soaking in, and I ended up having to add some heat to this one to get it off because it was stuck. So Mills's Autos helped me out with that one, so thank you to Jason for helping with that. So we've now got all of the O2 sensors in place, nicely tightened up. So everything's ready to go back on the car. I've also got a couple of nuts and bolts to attach this end to the overpipe, because on the stock manifold you actually get a threaded section here. However, that's not the case with this aftermarket one, so we're going to use these bolts instead that came with this manifold. So let's get under the car. It's going to be simply a case of slotting it back in place where the old one is, and doing these back up with, I think, what was a 14mm socket, and should be ready to go. Make sure we don't trap any of these wires as it goes in the engine bay, so we can pass those up and plug those in. Okay, so now the manifold's out the way, you can see exactly where it attaches. So you've got 1, 2, 3 studs. That's obviously your exhaust port, so that's where the exhaust gases come out. Then if we go over to the passenger side, again you've got 1, 2, 3 studs. So that's where we were removing those 3 bolts from each side, that's where they go. And then you can see over here, so that's the overpipe, so this one here. So that's what we call the overpipe, that's what we're going to be bolting to. Now I do have a replacement for one of those, but I'm going to replace that next time when I do the cap back. So for now we've got new bolts that go through these holes and actually bolt the manifold to that overpipe. So when we bring it in, we're going to slot it all in place, and it should be pretty easy to fit it back in. Okay, so now we're under the car. Just get everything prepped and ready. So I've got my nuts and bolts for the overpipe to be connected. I've got my 6 nuts to attach the manifold to the bottom of the car, so the underside of the car, so you can see here 1, 2, 3. I've got my gaskets in place so that it's all going to go in without forgetting to do those, so replace those and put new ones in where you can if yours aren't in great condition. So let's get that manifold in and we'll get it up against the engine. So you can tell straight away that it's a hell of a lot lighter than what the original factory one was, and there's a lot less of it. So let's just wiggle this in. Okay, so that's the side nearest you on. So let's get a bolt in. Don't want to use any sort of impact tools on putting these bolts back on. That was only for ease of getting any off. If you can't quite reach them with your fingers, just use your socket. And get those up and in and on. You just want to, for now, get them finger tight. You're not cross threading anything, and get all 3 in place. You don't want to tighten anything up just yet, so we want to make sure that everything's in the right place, the gaskets, everything fits before we actually tighten it all and get it pressed up against the engine. So I'm going to come this end now and just get again the 3 nuts on the end of the threaded section. So slot that up. That goes on so much easier because it's so much lighter, that you've not got any problems with having to try and lift up heavy weights with one hand, for example. Right, this one looks like it could be the trickiest one to do. So that's the nut on the passenger side in the UK, that's closest to the sump. That looks like you're going to need some sort of angled wrench, but we'll have a look at that when we get to it to see how we actually attach it. And there should be one right here in my face. So again, just get all those finger tight and on, just so you know it's not going to drop in your face. Because then I think what I want to do is just take a look at here, which is where it joins the overpipe. Let's just take a look at that connection there. We need to remember to get the gasket in because you can't pre-hang that. And then we've got nuts and bolts to thread through because we don't have that threaded section like I said with the stock one. So let's take a look. Get our torch in. So you can see it's just this joint here. They line up really well, so that's a good start, is that they're lining up. I'd be worried if they didn't. So we've got our gasket that needs to go in place. So let's take a look. So we're going to thread our bolts through from the front of the car maybe. Will that work? It's going to be a little bit tricky to show on camera, but you basically got to line up. Get that out a bit. Get the bolt through the gasket, so no, that's definitely through. I'm going to lift it up and through, and you can see that has now come through both sides. That's a good start. To squish my finger a little bit there. That was a little bit painful. Right. Then we have this side. Is it gonna? Right, so we might have to come through. And actually come through because we're getting really close to the O2 sensor here. Let's see if we can get the nut on the end. Should be a washer actually. So let's get that washer on. And all we're doing is bolting the new manifold up to the overpipe. So I know it might be tricky to see, but once you're under the car, there's only really one way of doing this job, so you'll work it out really easily. We have a bit of limited room because of this O2 sensor. What's causing me the difficulty at the moment. There we go. And that's on. So again, let's get that done up. Finger tight to start with, and finger tight is just so you're not compressing, sorry. So you're not cross threading any of the threads. Okay, so we've got our second washer. Let's slot that on there, and then get your nut in place. Again, all done. Finger tight. And then what we'll do, once it's all in place, we'll get some a spanner and a ratchet on there and just get those two done up. So that's there with the gasket in, this end with the gasket in. Everything's fitting really well. Let's put these cables, so the cables for the O2 sensors, just make sure they're poking through at the top, so when you go to the top of the engine bay to reconnect them, you can get to them really easily. So they're up there. So now it's literally going to be a case of tightening everything up. So what size are these bolts? Bigger than a 14. Maybe. Bigger than that. 17. Yep. But the good thing is with the Halfords toolkit, you could have a 17 ratchet. And all you do, go opposite ways and get that nice and tight. So what I'll do is, on the screen now, I'll put the proper foot-pounds and newton meters of what you're supposed to spec these up to. So I'm just going to do them tight for now, but I'll put the proper specs so you can, with your torque wrench, actually get them up to the exact setting. But for now I'll just do those extra tight. So I'm going to do it, maybe, let's have a look. There's a lack of space here to manoeuvre. Probably advised to wear some goggles at this point of the job, because certainly as you're looking up and peering into these little gaps, there's a lot of junk up there, dirt, loose dirt that's coming down. So that's that bit done nice and tight. So we've got to come up in here now, and we use our 14 socket. Get those 3 bolts at either end nice and tight. Again, I'll put all the specs on the screen below so you can torque them up to the exact spec they should be. And these jobs are always fiddly when you're lying on your back. It'd be so much easier if we had it in the air, but we don't all have a nice ramp at home, so I like to show that you can actually do these jobs on the driveway. Make sure you jack your car up nice and safely. Always good to have a second person with you if you can when you're jacking up a car, just so that they can watch and make sure everything's okay. So that's the 3 bolts now done on this end. So we've got the exact same this end, and then we're very close to being done and getting the first start of the car. So let's come this end. Right, so you can see we've got 1, 2 and 3 bolts. So let's get these 2 done first. So it looks like there's going to be 1 bolt that might need a bit of a different tool, but we'll have a look. That's 1. The good thing to see here is the engine bay. It's the first time I've been underneath the engine bay. It's actually oil free, or relatively oil free. Just a tiny little bit there, just a little weep, but I think that's probably where someone's overfilled it at the top and it dripped down maybe. Not overfilled it, sorry. Someone might have just... So there's 1 bolt, which is this bolt here that's closest to the sum. And if you look, you can't get straight at that bolt. So you can come in at an angle, but that's not quite right. That's where you delve into your toolbox and see what you've got in terms of angle pieces. So maybe something like this. Let's give that a try. Now how much room we've got for manoeuvre. Might need a smaller bit. Right, so that would work if we had a shorter socket, so maybe a smaller 14 with a smaller angle. Let's have a look. Yeah, that will definitely get in there. So let's just get an extension piece on that, then onto the end of our ratchet. See how we get on now. It's a bit fiddly. What size is that? Would help if that was a 14 and not a 12. So that should be the 14. That's the 14. Okay, that's why I was struggling so much. Okay, there we go. So let's do that up finger tight first, save us trying with the awkward tool and the awkward angle. So all the way to the top. Now we use this one and just do that final tighten. So again, all the torque specs I'll put on the bottom of the screen. That's why. Try, but I don't think. No, we need slightly longer 14. It's getting a bit tricky now. Space. But we're going to persevere and get it done. How about that one? There we go. Got there in the end, so we've got a slightly longer piece because obviously you got the thready section to take into account. Hopefully now, there we go, and that slots on. Let's check everything else is nice and tight now. So what have we done? We've done our 3 bolts up here. Got our 3, let's get that on camera, 3 bolts up here, and then our 2 bolts here. So that's everything under the car in terms of getting the manifold, and what I'd like to do is test it all, make sure there's no leaks before we then actually put the under tray on. So we're going to go outside now and connect the sensors again. Okay, so in the engine bay we've got the 2 connectors up here, if you remember, that we disconnected earlier. So they're just tucked in down here. So grey to grey. And don't forget they're all got to clip in properly in place, but for now I'm going to reconnect them so we can just test the whole thing first. That's one. And the second one, which is the black one. That's in place. So we've got our 2 O2 sensors reconnected. Got all our bolts done on the bottom side of the manifold. So what we'll do now, we'll go inside the car and start it for the first time. Okay, so there doesn't seem to be any leaks on the exhaust, so I've revved it, tried it a few times, checked it underneath, and it all seems nice and tight. So I'm going to get that tray back on underneath. So that was the 4 bolts that we put on to begin with. We're going to get that back in place. So yours will have more bolts than mine, clearly someone's took them all out. And then we're going to do an after fitting clip. So let's get the engine off and get that tray in place. Okay, so what we're going to do is put the engine tray back in place. Now remember this, because we've just test run it, it's going to be really hot. So just be really careful with your hands if you're going anywhere near any of the hot stuff. And what you need to do is just keep going and replace all the bolts that you took out of. Like I said, mine have got a load missing, so I'm just going to carry on. I'm going to bore you with the video of me just clipping this back in place. So we'll see you on the outside. Okay, so that's that heat shield. It's now solid and back in place where it should be, with some additional clips and bolts that were missing. That's everything under here, now back in place. Okay, so in this clip we lost the audio, but what I'm basically talking through is don't forget to clip in those cables for the O2 sensors down the front of the engine. So there's a couple of clips on each cable that you just need to replace and get it all in, so it's safely connected and not touching anything. Okay, hopefully you found that video useful. If you did, please hit that like button and subscribe for future content. Hit that notification bell and you'll get alerts every time we upload videos. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video. Thread bits, and there's actually little holes